Yeah. Okay, you can see my screen now. Uh, yeah.
Yes.
If you if you have a problem seeing my screen or something, please speak up. Otherwise, I would be like talking to myself. But anyways, welcome all, and it's pretty interesting that you made it to the React class. It's the last class, so you should be really like sort of proud of yourself. Yeah, you have passed like so many things, and usually React is like sort of a difficult subject. A lot of people they have trouble with, not in the sense that it's not that React is difficult, but they miss the essence and they miss the skills to actually do React. So you should be really proud of yourself that you made it until this point. That's like super awesome. Usually it takes years for people to be able to do like proper like React development and stuff. So really, 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 you should be happy about yourself. And just giving you a bit of context about like what we'll be doing for the next 5 weeks. We would be doing something called React. You can see it on the webpage. It's reactjs.org. And just to give you a bit of context, like what's React, what we'll be doing, because I just so you can get a big picture. Uh, so primarily, when you have been doing Node.js, I think I'm right. And when you transitioned from, for example, doing like JavaScript and HTML and stuff, you went to the Node.js part. It was a completely sort of a new thing. You've learned completely new skills. You weren't able before to do sort of like server apps and like communicate with databases and things. So Node.js really opens a new door for you. It's like a new skills that you are learning. In the React class, it's not quite the same thing. React will not like sort of take you to another land. React will just teach you like the thing that you have been doing before, which is building user interfaces. You have been doing it with like HTML and CSS and JavaScript. Just write some HTML and like some event listeners and some fetch and some promises and wire them up in the UI. React is the same thing. So in terms of what you're going to accomplish, React is not so much different. It's sort of the same thing. But React gives you a different way of doing it. So React is just a different way of doing it. And I would argue and say it's a better way. And it's not just about React. If you've heard other JavaScript frameworks like Vue.js, Angular, Svelte, React, there's so many frameworks now. But React is like a good balance between a community and an ecosystem and like an awesomeness of a framework. So it's not the best, but it's sort of a really good balance between the frameworks. So I was saying that these frameworks and React in particular, what will be sort of like teaching or studying today, isn't something that will take you to another level, but it will just teach you how to build like more professional uh, web applications. So it's not, I'm just repeating that again, it's not something, we will not learn completely new skills how to deal with mobile or servers or something. No, it's literally brushing up your HTML and CSS and JavaScript skills to build better apps. What I mean by better, structured apps that can be maintained, apps that can be worked on by so many people, apps that they are complex. Like when you see Netflix and Facebook and like Instagram and Twitter, they are all examples of web apps built with React. And they show sort of the complexity behind them. And React is made it like makes it really easy. Not easy, but it makes it manageable. You can manage complexity. Because if you really think about it, if you are building a web app, if you will like continue with like toward just building custom JavaScript and HTML and CSS in separate files and stuff like that, you will have troubles like maintaining it. And I think like a lot of people like already sort of felt that when you have a lot of event listeners and this triggers this and this triggers that, it's like it's a mess. So React is really here to sort of give structure and life to the skills that you already have. So nothing to be afraid of. It's just a different way of thinking. So whenever you feel sort of like, why I'm doing it this way, I can just do it with HTML and JavaScript like before. I can just do it get element by ID or like query selector and just do it. You will get the idea behind React as we are progressing in the class. Just bear with me that React is a different way of doing things. It's not necessarily say that, oh, you can do it this way and it's the only way. It's not. You can do it in so many different ways, but React will give us sort of a clear and a robust way of doing it. Maybe you will not be able to notice that in the beginning, of course, because as you're learning anything, the tool feels stupid. but I promise you, it's something that is really worth it. It's really worth it, both like learning wise and also like career wise. It's something that is really in demand. So many people are asking for it in jobs, and even random people. Like I never saw like like big companies advertising for frameworks, but now they are doing it with React. It's quite nice. And also like skills wise, you will learn to think and to approach problems from a super different way. So I would really sort of like advise you to sort of continue and try to not listen to your mind when it says, yeah, but this can be easily done with like add event listeners and query selectors. Yes, we know, but we are trying to sort of bring some structure and some life to our web apps. uh, does it make sense what I'm saying? If somebody has a problem, can just
Yeah,
as
yeah, it makes sense.
yeah, just use the hand. Please let's make it more of a conversation than just me speaking all the time. Because at the end, the goal of this class is not to speak about something, but to like sort of build and share knowledge. Does it make sense? So
Yeah, cool.
if you have anything, any information you want to add, something missing, something doesn't trigger in your mind, please say it. Yes. So when you see the web page of React, it's called JavaScript library for building user interfaces. So we sort of explained what a user interface. If you don't know what a user interface means, this is a user interface. It's actually the pixels on the screen, what the user sees. The user doesn't see a database. The user doesn't see a schema. The user doesn't see the variable in your code. The user sees colors, sees pixels, divs, stuff like that. So this is what a user interface means, the UI, or like user interface UI. But what the user really sees and interact with, that's the essence of a user interface. So it's not the promises, it's not networking, it's not databases, it's not controllers, it's the pixels on the screen. That's what a user interface means. And you can see that it's a JavaScript library. So I would guess that you've used the npm in the Node.js class, and you've got introduced into the world of dependencies and libraries, and you could actually install libraries. Just use npm install. And what a library really means? Yes, somebody else. I am recording actually.
Sorry, what was the question?
No. Somebody asked if I'm recording or not, but I am.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So I was saying that you've been introduced to the world of like npm and how you can install dependencies. And think of a dependency as just some code written by you or somebody and just shared. So like the same way you can share a picture on Instagram or something, dependency is just some code you write and after that you put on npm and people can just download it. So React is not an exception. React is literally the same thing. If you go to npm and say React, you can use npm install React. And I is just an alias for install, but it's just a library. It's the same way with Express and all these libraries. It's some code packaged for us, so we can just uh, clone it or get it or download it. So that's what does it mean by a JavaScript library. So it's a JavaScript library, some code that we will get for building user interfaces. I hope that makes sense for everyone. So React is not for doing animations. React is not for doing like servers or anything. React is for building what the user sees, literally. That's the idea behind React. And you can see here that there is like three different sections: declarative, component based, and learn once, write anywhere. Let's discuss these sort of three things. The first thing is called declarative. And if you just read this, I assume you can see it. React makes it painless to create interactive UIs, design simple views for each state in your application. There's like some talks about state. We will talk about it today, but the sense of declarativeness is that there is two ways of doing things, usually. There's the declarative and the imperative way. And the way you should think about it is that imperative is like a for loop. You are literally telling the computer that I have an I start at 0, and I will be incremented. And before each incrementation, I should make array of I, so I can get the variable I and put it in something. So you are literally telling the computer what to do. You are interacting with the computer and specifying what to do. like in sort of in an imperative way, in a step-based way, do this and do this and do this. But in another hand, if you think about something like a map or a for each, you have an array, you call for each, and you give it a function. You are telling JavaScript, what do you need as a result? Like you have a function that should return this, and the map will take care of like running the function for each element and returning the new array and everything for you. So you are more interested in the result. You are more interested in describing the result. It's like the restaurant example, of course. If you go to a restaurant, you are more interested in the result, so you can get a menu and pick stuff from the menu. But that's declarative. You are declaring what you want. But you can do it in an imperative way, which is going to the kitchen and picking things and putting things together and removing this and removing this. That's like a for loop. You exactly tell the computer what to do compared to the thing. So that's imperative versus declarative. It's not something code-wise, but it's like a mental model, how you approach problems. Would you approach them from an imperative way and like exactly tell the computer what you want? Or from a declarative way, which is just describing to the computer what you want, like a map or something, and the computer would make sure to have an eye and increment it and like loop through the array and manage all the complexity for you. So React is a declarative framework. React, we will tell React what we want. We will not tell React exactly what we want to do. We will just tell it what we want, the results. And React will make sure to actually give us that thing that we are asking for. Does that make sense?
Yes, and can you please zoom in the screen?
Yeah, I can definitely do that.
Yes, thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Nice. And we have component-based. So what does component-based mean? Component-based is that instead of building my HTML, finishing my HTML, finishing my JavaScript, finishing my CSS, and tying them together with IDs and get element by IDs and get element by class, instead, I will build smaller chunks of code. I will build some JavaScript with some HTML and CSS and put them together. Some JavaScript and some HTML and some CSS and put them together. So I will have this chunk-based development. And we can visualize that in a sort of a good way. Let me just do this. Let me do that. Can you see this thing on my screen? Can you see the screen?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Cool. So this is example of YouTube. I think everybody seems to know YouTube and uses it. Make sense? Let me just.
Yes, but the user interface is different than YouTube.
What?
It doesn't look like YouTube. The design is different.
It is literally YouTube. It's the app of YouTube. It's not the web page, but I think it's fine. So if you have like of course you don't need to focus a lot on the design or details, but what I'm saying here is that if you are like tasked to build something like YouTube, probably what you will do is that you will build some HTML, okay, to describe the web page. So describe the video, describe the list of videos, describe the players, describe the thing. After that, you will add some JavaScript. You will add some JS. And that JS will be responsible for like, getting this video. So we have a click listener on this video. We have a player, and the player is actually playing. And when we click this button, the play button or the stop button, it's we have some JavaScript logic to do that. So you can see that the way you are building this, it's like iterative way. You are telling the computer, I have an HTML page, I have a video player, I have a video list, I have all this thing in my HTML. And after that, you write some JavaScript, and next to it, you write some CSS. So this is what traditionally you will do. You will write a whole HTML, you will write a JavaScript file and you write a CSS file. Instead, in the new world, we are not doing that. And React doesn't do that. Instead, what we'll be doing, it's dividing the page into like smaller components. So for example, you can see here that we have this video player. Okay? We have this video list. And we have some comments over here with some details. So this is video This is a video player. This is video list. So you will start thinking about your page this way. Instead of approaching this traditional way of doing it, which is just like coding the HTML, and after that, when you are done with the presentation and the HTML, you just go to JavaScript and you start developing some JavaScript, and after that, you style it with CSS. Now we will be interested in building these like small blocks. So I know that my web page has or my app actually has a video player. So I will go and build a video player. And in that video player, I will put some HTML, some JS, and some CSS. And the same way here in my video list. So instead of, I'm repeating it again, having like huge chunks of HTML and CSS and stuff, we will divide that and build smaller components. Of course, you are asking yourself like, but how are we gonna do that? Yeah, bear with me now. We will do it in practice, but I'm just trying to give you sort of a mental model, a big picture, so we can approach the code with a much better sort of overview. So this is how kind of React and the new way. It's not just React. It's like any modern development or any modern JavaScript frameworks. How it's just doing things. It's this sort of component way. And you will tell me what's the benefit of that? There is a lot of benefits. For example, if I want to change the video player over here, imagine if I have a long JavaScript file, I would be like fiddling in the JavaScript file. And maybe the change to the video player will involve a change to the video list because there is some event listeners and there is some IDs that they are shared. But in the component model, I'm sure that the component itself has all the JavaScript and CSS and HTML necessary to function. So if I want to do any change to it, I will only go to the video player. That will make development faster. That will make so many things faster. You can split people can work on different things. That really optimizes so many sort of spectrums. I will ask you again, does this make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no questions?
No.
Cool. So as I said before, I'm just trying to give you, please also mentors, feel free to interrupt if somebody agrees with something. Yes?
I have a question. I have mentioned before about when we want
I cannot hear you properly, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now it's better. Just get closer to the mic.
You have mentioned before when we want to work with React, so we need to install it like Express. So every month, for every project, we want to download like Express or what?
Yeah,
what you mean?
But we will go into the coding part. Try to focus on what I'm explaining now, the mental model. We will code, we will install, and like all these steps. But just try to sort of focus on the ingredients that I'm trying to sell now.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely, your question will be answered today.
Okay. Thank
you. Yeah. So this is what the component model means. It just means that instead of building huge chunks of things, we'll divide our page. Like if you see here, for example, too, we have a navbar, we have this header of React and like blue take tutorial. We have this block here, we have this code block here, and we have footer at the end. So you can also see this as another way of doing it. You divide, instead of having whole HTML for the page and whole JavaScript for the page, you actually divide the navbar, and the navbar will have its own HTML and its own CSS and its own JavaScript. So if you want to remove the navbar, edit the navbar, replace the navbar by another navbar, you can do that easily instead of fiddling with like the navbar had an ID similar to the header and stuff like that. Third one is called learn once, write anywhere. This is a controversial statement, but what does it mean is that, so it's not really something we are concerned about. It doesn't matter, but I just like to explain people so they can research and do things. But this is not something for the class, but I would say that React is a framework that's capable of not doing only web development. So when you write React, usually when you write HTML and CSS, you are targeting a web page or a web browser. Your app can run there. But in React, you are actually able to write some code in a specific way that we will see today. You will be capable of writing React. But that code can actually target mobile apps. So you can deploy your React code into a mobile app. You can deploy it into Windows application, into a Linux application. So React has this concept of you write your app once, it's called learn once, you just learn it once, and you can write it anywhere. So you can use React to target and like do so many things. There's something called React Native that's they're mentioning here, which is just a React in the mobile, like it's like 90%, 80% React and some additional things. But essentially, with the same React code that you write for web, you'll be able to target mobile. So that's pretty nice idea that with one framework and one skills, you can actually expand your horizon and do mobile and web and desktop and stuff like that. That's pretty awesome. But let's just recap. We said declarative means we are more interested in results. We just describe what we want. We don't exactly tell the computer what we want, like we saw with the video player and the video list and the component based. We have a component based, which means instead of traditionally building HTML, finishing it, describing all the page, building some JavaScript to make the page interactive, and after that some CSS to style it, now we will shift our mental model into thinking about components, and we build small, reusable. What I mean by reusable is that they can be used in so many places. So we build small components. These components, they will contain everything to function. They will contain some JavaScript, some small HTML, and some small CSS. And this, like a video player has all the ingredients inside it to function. And you have video list, and you have a header and a footer, and like a chat users and blah blah blah, and all the stuff like that. But the essence of it is that these things are built separately, independently. They don't know about the existence of each other. And after that, we can compose them and put them together. So this is the three sort of ingredients or the main concepts behind React. Of course, the big picture, not the details. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. There's some code examples here, but let's talk about that later. So let's maybe start by doing some React. Are people ready to code maybe here? Let's do it. So let's just minimize this one. I'm in my desktop. I'll just zoom in here, and so I will create mCloud. Just say React 12. So I've created a React 12 folder here, as you can see. I'll cd React 12. So now I'm inside this folder. This folder is empty. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start or create a new React project. React involves a lot of steps. There's so many things into React, but essentially there is a way that we can do it without like being concerned how to install it and how to start and how to build a new app, which is something, by the way, I didn't say that, but React was started by Facebook. So Facebook is the company that started React. Of course, it's an open source framework, but most of the developers that work on React, they are from Facebook, and Facebook tried to hire them. So it's a Facebook sort of framework, but the community and the ecosystem is not Facebook based. I would say it's a pretty open framework, and there is something called Create React App. It's on GitHub. Yeah. So it's basically something called the Create React App. It lets you create applications without really thinking about dependencies or anything. You just type one command and you are ready to go with an application. So that's pretty awesome. We will use that to develop because there is so many extra steps that we will discuss after. But something really important we didn't discuss actually, it kind of slipped my mind, which is the idea behind single page applications. I don't know if people actually heard this term before. Does it trigger anything? Like if people can reply to this question, like single page application, what does it mean?
I want to say something. I'm not sure if I'm right, but I have seen some
definitely.
websites. Yeah, I have seen some websites where we just click and open the different sections inside one page, and we don't go on another page. So is that something like?
Yeah, that's actually that's not a like. Of course, there's no 100%, but that's actually yes. From a user's perspective, it's right. It's
Can I see something?
yes.
It's API or what's called a page application with one page. It's has one page and just change the content without go from page to another page. It's like a book, for example. You when you turn off from page to page. So like Facebook, for example, Facebook when you change when you press on the information or on another page on another things. So here you just change the content without change the framework. If I can call it framework.
Yeah, that's a pretty good answer too. Thank you for that's actually that's also a really good one. That we have one page and we change the content of the page. So let's just like scratch a bit of like how we have been building web applications now. So we know that we have a computer. So this is your computer. Sorry for the drawing. And the computer usually, and damn it. So you can say, for example, go to google.com. So your computer will send a request to google.com, and we call this a client, and this a server. So usually when you build your app, you will package it in some like you will have some HTML pages, for example, like index.html, about us.html, contact us.html. So you build a bunch of these pages. In case of Facebook, we have profile.html, we have a main website, which is where you see post.html, we have like messaging.html, settings.html. So we have different pages. Essentially, when you go, maybe let's about the example of Facebook. So, or let's just take a random example. So when you go to example.com/hello, this server will reply to you by sending a response, and usually the response is an HTML file. So we will send hello.html. Okay, and hello.html, if we can scratch it here, it's just like doc type, some HTML, and we have like here HTML and HTML, and we have like body, and we have a lot of HTML. So that's what an HTML means. And we also have like script. We can here have like script and CSS. So essentially, you are like sending a request to a server, and the server will reply with an HTML file. If, for example, you decide to go for the same client, if he goes for example.com/home, the server will reply with home.html. And home.html is a different HTML document. So every time you are going to a path, we call this a path. We call this no. We call this the path. Every time you go to a path, you are asking the server for a different resource, which is a different HTML page. That's what we call a traditional or server side or whatever. That means that the server is responsible for giving us a specific page that the user wants to view. If the user from hello, if there is a link inside hello, if there is a link here inside the hello page to the example.com/home, that means that the user will go to the server again and fetch that HTML file again. So we have like different HTML files, different JavaScript files for the different pages. This is what we call the traditional web app. And the other side, we have something called single page application. And what we really mean by single page application is that we have the same client. He will send a request to a server, the client, server. So this time when you say example.com/hello, the server actually will reply with like sort of a similar structure, but it's not really the same. It will send an HTML page. Okay, but this time, the HTML page, it's not filled with HTML. What does it mean? In this case here, we had an HTML ready to go. We had divs, we had Ps, we had everything inside it. So the browser will just traditionally map the HTML into some screen, like some pixels. But in our case here, we will have like a body. Of course, we have all the HTML here, like HTML and doc type and things. Let's focus on the body. And the body maybe has a div. And this div is empty. Body. So this div is really empty. Why it's empty? Because the server is not responsible for generating any content. Instead, we will send the script. And that script has a JavaScript file. And that JavaScript file, when the browser will run it, it will be responsible for building our interface, like creating elements and like you have been doing with like the movie exercise and stuff in JavaScript 2 and 3. So essentially, HTML is empty. If you disable JavaScript, if you don't run JavaScript, the HTML will be empty. But once the web page will be picked up, the browser will run the JavaScript file, and the JavaScript file will start booting and building interfaces and attaching them essentially to this div. So this div will be empty, but the JavaScript will start putting content inside it. Okay, so next time the user clicks a link, it clicks to load a different page. If you remember, we already had the JavaScript here. Okay, and with the HTML. And we see that we have an empty div and we have all the JavaScript needed. So in JavaScript, we define what the user really, or what we should do when the link clicked. So instead of going to the server, which is not right, we have inside the JavaScript some code that will run when the user transitions from page to page. So when the user clicks a link, like clicking a link here or something in GitHub, the JavaScript that we loaded in the beginning will be responsible for deleting, because we said that this div, we said that this div will be hosting our content. So JavaScript will build some content here. It will create elements and stuff like that traditionally. When we transition the page, we just move this into an empty div again. And we have some JavaScript that basically, based on the route that we changed, it will fill it with some other things again. So that's the idea compared to this one. So in this one, every time we were requesting something, we go to the server will reply with something. Every time we send something, the server will reply with something. So our client is always dependent on the server to change any content. But in our case here, no. The first time the user visits the page, we give the user some HTML, which is kind of empty, and a lot of JavaScript. And I really emphasize on a lot of JavaScript. Sometimes it's like over megabytes. That's pretty stupid, but this is how it is. Like it gets smaller. It's really, but that's sort of like why we see a lot of big JavaScript files now. So that JavaScript file is responsible for handling navigation in the client and for handling building user interfaces. So that JavaScript file, when it runs, it will go to that div, the div that we saw it here, this div, and it will say, okay, I need to put this and this and this and this in the div. I need to put a header and a footer and a YouTube and a video player and all that stuff. If the user transition to home or something, I will delete everything inside the div and put the home content inside the div, instead of actually waiting for the server, going to the server and building new HTML file and the server would send it to us. Does that make sense? Or I'm just talking no sense?
I am confused.
I've actually got a simple example maybe I can share that can kind of tie
Yes.
this all together.
Please.
So I think kind of a fun way to look at this is you can almost compare transitioning from writing a traditional website of just using plain HTML, JavaScript, and CSS to using React, to going from just reading a book, like a physical book, to using a Kindle. So with a book, if you want to go from one page to another, you have to flip a new page every single time. And it's a new page every time. It's a fresh new piece of paper. Only, one piece of paper can only have one page of the book. And that's kind of what we're doing with this client and the server here. So, every time you want to go to a new page on a website, you have to ask the server, hey, send me a new page of that website. What we're doing with React, which is more like the Kindle, if you've got your Kindle there, you're always using the same screen. That's always going to be the same page of your book. And when you tap it, boom, it just knows, hey, we're going to load the new text for the new page. And that's more or less what React is doing. And if we take it one step further back, you can think like, books are great, and if you start, you can very easily get into this book versus Kindle debate. Some people really like how the page feel when they turn it, but you can start to think like, oh, if I've got 30 books, I can't just have them laying around anymore. I suddenly need a shelf to organize them. And, if you have thousands of books, suddenly you need a whole library to organize all those books. Where when you break it down and you start using something a bit more technically complicated like Kindle, you can have those same 1,000 books. You don't need a library for them. You can just have them in this nice, neat little package, and you just swap things out every time. And it suddenly, once you step back and see the scale of where things can be, that's where using React suddenly starts to shine, and it kind of shows its colors. Hopefully that kind of takes the picture and makes a bit more sense of it. But does that clarify it for anyone, or did I just make it more confusing by comparing a web framework to a book?
Speak up.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
So then in that case, in the previous module, when we learned Node, it was like we had different routers for different page.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work like that in React then.
Yeah, exactly. So you will not serve different pages for different routes. Instead, the server will only return one HTML page and some JavaScript. And every time the user transitions, the only communication that happens between the server and the client is sending some data. It's like, oh, give me the user information. give me the profile data. So when we go to the profile, if we are on the main page and we go to the profile page, we don't ask the server to give us the profile page. We already know inside JavaScript how the profile page looks like. We only need the profile information. So we only ask. So you will have different routes, but these different routes will be just returning data.
So so we will not be using the concepts we learned in Node.js.
You will be using it, but React is, as I told you before, React is a different way of doing things. So it
Okay.
doesn't mean that everything you will build with React. The server side things has its own sort of length, but we are talking now about highly interactive applications. We're not talking
Okay.
about like any web page. So if you
Okay,
got
yeah.
like if you see Netflix, for example, Netflix, it's a single page application, but if you go to the sign in, it's a different page. If you go to some like settings, it's a different page. But the video and the video player is a single page application built with React. So it's as I told you before, this is expanding your area as a developer and what to do more than replacing knowledge.
Oh yeah, I have another question then.
Yeah.
So the React is simply just not going to be a UI. It is going to give us all the content. Yeah, it's UI, but all the contents that goes inside the page or the logic that goes inside the JavaScript, even that is going to be rendered by the React, right?
Actually, you are right and sort of wrong in a bit. So React will give us a power on how to actually build user interfaces, how we can fill the div. React will give us the way on how we can fill the div with some divs and elements and Ps and stuff like that. But how we transition URLs and stuff like that, that's something that already exists in the browser. React doesn't import it on us. So React will give us a mechanism when we transition a page. React, based on the route, will detect which HTML to build. So React, it's responsible for building the HTML. How we fetch the data and how we bring the stuff, that's like promises and all the stuff that we learned before. That doesn't change. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but I'm just really confused by the fact that where does I don't know, maybe I'm just so stuck with Node, but where does Node come here? I mean, because we need a database, we need to access things from the database, and we need all those things, right? So I'm just not able to relate that concept with this React.
Yes, you would be able to do that, but please now try to sort of focus on like the ideas behind React, and it will make sense. I promise you, because we will go and advance and build like larger application. We will need some backends to give us some data and stuff, and you will see how it works well. But try to sort of like look at the big picture now. Like, what does React do? So if somebody like tells you like how React works, like the library and the books example that we just heard now, try to focus on something like that. But how it fills the hole between like the server and like the traditional way of building HTML and CSS, you'll be able to, because now we are just talking. There's no code. Once we see the code, we understand.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Sorry. Any questions? No, of course. Any questions?
I have a confusion, actually, not a question. When you said that Facebook introduced this React, so is it? I mean, Facebook is not a one-page application, right? Or website? No.
Well, Facebook is a one-page app, yes, but
it is.
It's not a fully one-page app. They still have some pages where they are not part of the React. So it's like a hybrid. There is some React. It's like Netflix. Netflix, when you sign in, there's no React. But once you are using the video player, that's React. So it's not like 100%.
Okay. So when because we just learned Node, so I want to I want to relate things with React and Node. I want that bridge. So that my question was, when we were working with Node, so we have that HTML page and front-end JavaScript pages and back-end JavaScript pages and database. So we have only single HTML page where as I think that we need one HTML page to first time send the request to server and then get the response. So we have that thing there. But how we were doing things, we were routing into different pages. So if I think like that, that we don't require or we don't need to go on the different pages, how about we just redirect every information into a single home page and not use that sub pages like inside pages like internal pages. Everything on the index page, and keep that node project like that. I mean, the same how we were working, and remove all the sub pages and access all the data inside homepage with like when we go to the Facebook. If I think about an example, if I click somebody's profile, so in URL I will see that slash and then person's name and then slash and then his friend's name or anything else like slash and slash
Yes.
and information and slash.
Yeah.
So when I go to my node project, I will do like that in Postman or in my browser, like slash and information and slash and question mark and its ID or information and then slash and so on. So, I mean, am I right?
You are actually right that we will eliminate the existence of the other pages. We will only have one page, and the server will only be responsible for returning data through Postman or something, as you said.
So for now, like to relate Node and React, we just have to remove all the internal pages and get all the data inside the same
Exactly.
home. Okay,
Exactly.
that,
So
now it gets simple. I mean, because it is so many.
so Express or like your server will be more responsible for sending data more than sending pages.
Yes. Okay.
That's the thing. And
So
but please,
for internal, yeah.
but like please, like try to learn how to abstract things and to focus on things, because we have 5 weeks. We don't have 4 hours. We have 5 weeks. So if something is confusing in terms of Node, try to say, okay, this can be cleared out in the next 5 weeks because we will communicate with APIs in the next 5 weeks. Let's try to focus on like what's React, what's the deal with React, how React is different, how it works, more than like, oh, but I'm traditionally building apps this way. Try to sort of like, as I told you before, React is not a completely sort of new way. It's just something that it's just a different way of doing things. So please like bear with me and try to grasp the concepts more than just try sort of being lost in the knowledge. Any question?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll just hop in there just to further clarify. I think it's fair for us to assume in the first lesson and probably even in the second lesson that you can almost put the stuff you've learned in Node on the shelf for just a second, because we're kind of going back to what we learned in the HTML, JS 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to take all of that and kind of put it into a much nicer box in order to handle all of the JS, HTML, and CSS in a much nicer, more convenient package. And that high level concept of routing, where you previously routed, single pages from an individual route, we're still going to have those high level concepts in React later on. So it's important to remember that, but they're kind of moving up the chain. So certain elements will be routed through there. And exactly as Eunice said, the stuff you learned about data and handling databases, that will be further simplified and almost kind of more focused, so that there's a single point of entry. All of your data is going to go straight into the React app one way. And as we continue to learn and build on what we know about React, we'll figure out how we handle that sort of thing. I don't know if that was more helpful in the understanding, but maybe.
So I have to forget the Node part and just learn about that to keep it in my mind, like for HTML and JavaScript part, and forget about the Node right now. Good.
Exactly. Try to reimagine how you are building HTML and CSS in a different way. That's the role of this class. Is not to replace backend or something. It's just building HTML and JavaScript and stuff in a different way. That's any other questions, please? Like,
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm following. I just want to understand one thing. Where is this JavaScript gonna be storage? Because you're saying we're sending.
It will be next to your HTML page. So when we send your HTML page, there is a script inside it, links to that JavaScript file. But except that JavaScript file doesn't contain only console log and some get element by IDs. It will be just responsible for building all the JavaScript. Create element, append child, create element, append child.
Yeah, but it's going to be like on the, like I'm going to send it from the server to the client and it's going to stay in the client, or is always going to be communicating with the server?
Yes, it will be always in the client until the client refreshes the page. That will now the client will send a new request.
So the
But
bigger
as long
my
as
JavaScript, it's good.
what?
So the bigger the JavaScript, it's going to take longer to open the page for the first time, but then it's going to be faster, right?
Exactly. There is some techniques and some advanced topics around that, but yeah, try to not like think about so many variables at the same time. But this is the big idea. Yes, you will send one JavaScript file. When it's done, it will be responsible for like building all the pages and stuff.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, welcome. Any more questions or should we continue? So let's continue. Let me just minimize this one. And yeah, so I was talking before about this Create React app, which is a way to build React apps or create them, because there is quite a bit of some heavy lifting that needs to be done. And usually you will just use something called NPX. So NPM and NPX, they are the same. The difference is that NPM requires you to install something and after that use it. NPX will download it and use it for you. So usually you will do this. You will say npm install -g like this. Damn it. This is what you will do. Let's do that. Damn it. Okay. I have a proxy from my bank company that I work for that it's blocking me from reaching to npm. Let me just do something. /npm dump. Yes. That should work. Yeah. So you just, I think everybody's familiar with this. -g means it's global, so we can use it from everywhere. It's not local to this project. So if you say npm install -g again, that should install your thing. Now to use it, you just say create React app, okay? And you give it the name of your app. Let's say first week, okay? And we are inside the React 12 folder, first week, because the naming no. Okay, so it should be just kind of no. It's saying name can not longer contain capital letters, so it should be only small letters. And it's creating application for us. It's using this yarn thing here, and yarn and npm, they're like sort of similar. If you can look it up if you want. It's just an alternative to npm, but don't be concerned, please.
I have a little question. Are we supposed to do any exercises during the class so that we should follow all these steps along with you?
No, because you will have some time to do that.
I mean, later after class.
Yeah. So
okay.
just because like if you would be following yourself and trying to do it, you would miss so many things that I would say. Which is something sort of because so you will struggle a bit. So try to see the full picture, how I'm building the things. That will sort of help you better. And if after you will have trouble installing React or something, you can just reach out to any of us and we can easily help. So it's not the big deal. But as long as you follow the steps and you know when you are stuck and when you aren't, that's the most important thing. So as I said, you can replace yarn with npm. That's just another thing. And so we suggest that you begin typing CD first week because you remember React 12 was an empty project. Now we have a project called first week because we run this command, and this command was responsible for creating new project for us. So let's say to CD first week, okay, and let's say npm start. Before that, let me just Let me just open VS Code. So let's say I'll just do it here. Control. My computer is going crazy. So let's say npm start. And if you go to localhost 3000, it's saying here, you can now view first week in the browser. It's localhost 3000. It's literally this one. So open it here. And it will give us this React logo spinning and some edit source. Does this make sense? What we went through now? This is not something you will do every time. This is something you do every time you start a new project. You build a new React or you create a new project. But this is not something you do every time you are working on the project. Does this make sense? The steps that we went through now, does it make sense? Do you have any question about that? No? Okay, cool. So what we did essentially, we installed a dependency called Create React App by using npm install -g, the name of it. And the reason, because this dependency can create applications for us instead of us creating files like here. And we run it, Create React App, we give it the name of the project. The name project should be lowercase, all of it. You saw my mistake. Name it first week, my homework, something like that. And that will like initialize project for you, create all the files, give you a ready project. Super easy. And after that, you can just, that will create a new folder for you. You can go inside the folder of the project and run it with npm start. I hope that makes sense. Let's explore the project a bit. So we have a package JSON, okay? We have a package JSON, and it's a traditional package JSON with some dependencies and some scripts and yeah, some browser list and stuff. We don't care about that. What we care about is that there is a name here. We have some dependencies and scripts. So the dependencies are React, React DOM, and React scripts. React scripts is the thing that runs this project when you say React start, when you say npm start. React and React DOM, these are, so React is not just React, it's something called React and something called React DOM. They work together. We will talk about it in details, but this is the thing. If you want to install React, you also need this React DOM with it. That's both things. And here's some testing thing that we don't care about. It's just some helpful testing methods. So yeah, so we have React and React DOM here, and we have some scripts. And these scripts, so when we did npm start, it's because npm start and React scripts will run the start. Does it make sense on a high level what this package JSON is doing? It's just description for some dependencies and a script to run the project. I hope it makes sense. If it doesn't, please ask. Yeah, so we have some other files here. We have some get ignore, so we avoid sending the node models. We have a public, it's where we put our public stuff, like images, SVGs, videos, stuff like that. That's a public folder. We have node models, the file that's bigger than the universe. Yes, and we have the source. So the source is our main thing. What I'm gonna do is, there's so many files here, but the file that you need to sort of keep track on is index.js. That's the file. It's called index.js. And I will just delete these things and delete this. I will only keep, or let's roll with that. The project is still working. The project has like some refresh capability, so when you change it, we'll change it there. So we see this weird code. Let's sort of comment this code, and let's start working. So we see an empty page because we are not running anything now. So before using React, you need two things. You need to import React. So let's comment this one. We need to import. Are you familiar with the import syntax, or you have been only using require?
Can you zoom the screen a bit, Yunus? Sorry.
Of course. Just
Yeah.
let me.
And I want to ask one more thing. When you
Yeah.
open gitignore file,
Yeah.
have you wrote everything by your own, or when you install the package and
I didn't
everything?
touch. I didn't touch this project. This project was generated by me. Like React Create App generated the project. I didn't do anything in this project. The only thing that I did is this comment here. Everything else is built by Create React App. There's nothing hidden here.
Okay. Okay.
So Create React App is responsible for generating a running project that you can use immediately without changing anything. Yeah. So I will repeat my question again. Did you use the import syntax before?
No.
Okay, so let's explain about that a bit.
I'm sorry,
So-
didn't we use it to import the modules in the node?
Yeah,
When we-
like
Would you
you use
import?
like
Wasn't export
like
or import? Export.
didn't you use something like this,
No.
or you use something like this?
No, we use require. All right.
Yes. I have seen import in like importing CSS in somewhere.
Yeah. So I would say that this and this are equivalent if you take a look at them. Instead of saying, so this name here is the name here, and instead of saying equal require express, you literally, so I will rewrite it again. I will say import the name here from the name here. Does it make sense? Does
Yeah.
it make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this is a new. It's called like ES models, ECMAScript models, and it's a new way. It will be the standard way of importing things because this is custom to Node.js. Now the web people, they decided to roll with this a couple of years ago, and Node.js supports this already, the import from, but people are still stuck with the require because there is some it's incompatible with so many things. So we will be using this syntax instead, this modern way of doing it. And this actually doesn't work in a lot of browsers, but we will talk about transpiling after. So we do this, and we also import React DOM from React DOM. I can name this whatever I want. So here I would say React, and here React with the capital letter. So we imported two dependencies, like Express and stuff. We imported React and React DOM. They are two different dependencies. So this is the essential parts of like what you need to build a React app to start coding. After that, what we need to do is run React. And the way we run React is by build. So I will just show you an example. So we say React DOM, okay? React DOM.render. We give it some HTML. So let's say we have an H1. We have my computer is like really slow. I don't know why. This is pretty weird. Maybe because I'm okay. Let's I will kill this one. Sorry for the interruption. Yeah, so we have an H1 and we say it's hello. So this is a function, it's called render, that takes two parameters. What I want to render, like the content that I want to render, and where I want to render it. And where essentially it's just a div in my HTML. You remember when I told you that there is a div inside the HTML that it's empty and it doesn't contain anything? It's actually here. If you see here, we have a body with a div with an ID root that doesn't contain anything. So React will use this div to inject some content. So React will help us build some divs and some UIs and put them inside this div. So they will be visual to the client. Because other than that, at the end we need to build some HTML. That's how the browser actually works. So we have this H1, and where do we want to put it? We want to put it inside the div that we talked about. So if we say const, root equal document dot get element by ID. We named it here root, so we can say root here, and we give it as the second parameter. So we are telling React to put this H1 inside our root div, that it's empty inside the HTML. If we go to the HTML here, we have our H1. And if we check if we check here this hello, we can see that the div was empty before. If you take a look at it, the div is empty here. But now it's not empty. There's an H1 inside it. Why there's an H1 inside it? Because we told React to put this H1 inside our root. Does this kind of make sense on a high level basis?
Yes, it is.
Everybody? Because I think this is sort of one of the
Yep.
most crucial.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So this is the idea behind React, is that we dynamically build some content. But I don't know if you kind of noticed, but there is something weird here. We are putting HTML inside JavaScript files. If you think about it and you pass this here, the browser will say unexpected token. This cannot happen. Well, you can put it inside a string. This would work, but here it's clearly not inside the string. It's actually inside the JavaScript code. Why it's that? Does anyone here has a hint why this works?
Is that
Even though
JSX?
what?
Is that JSX?
Yes, it's called JSX, but why it works? Why it doesn't work in normal browsers? Why we cannot put this in normal browsers?
Maybe it's because of that React DOM. It does something.
Yeah, but this is not a valid JavaScript file, so
Yeah.
JavaScript should complain way before. So let me introduce you to something called Babel. Did anybody here heard about Babel before?
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
So Babel is a tool. It's called a transpiler or a compiler, call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. It's a tool that transpile or translate code to another code. What I mean by that, I think you've all used arrow functions to some point. So all of you used like a const function equal the arrow function, and you did this.
Yes.
Okay, you can see here in the this is my input code. This is the output of Babel. So Babel converts the arrow function into an old way function, the old style of writing function. You will tell me why. Because,
But why do we need old things like old functions or old fashioned
yeah,
JavaScript?
exactly. That's a really good question.
Because the browser.
I cannot hear.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, because the old version of browser doesn't support ECMA6 and all the codes coming after ECMA6.
Yes, to put it in simple words, this arrow function is a new addition to JavaScript. I think you already know about that. It's something new in JavaScript. What does it mean? It was introduced in 2015. Browsers that were released before 2015, in 2005 and 8 and 2000 and 2009, they never saw arrow functions. So when you try to run this in an old browser, it will complain and say, oh, this doesn't work. Because I don't know this syntax. I was released way before. And when you release browser, you cannot go to it and update it in a lot of times. So Babel will try to convert the code into a readable code by the old browsers. The same thing works for let x equal 5. The browser will convert it, Babel will convert it to a var instead of a let. Why? Because var works for like really old browsers. var existed since 1994 or something, but let it's 2015 or like 16. So does this make sense that we are actually changing the code so it can run in the old browsers? And why we are doing that? Why you can at the end you can just write this style. You can write function instead of arrow function. But we will not be able to use the new addition of JavaScript. And as a developer, I want to be ahead. I want to use the new things. I want to experiment with the new things. So that's the purpose of this transpiler. It's to allow us to write JavaScript in the future, write future JavaScript, and Babel will take care of it. So you should never care about this one. This doesn't give, like, nobody should really care about that. But the thing that you need to understand is, like, before your code is going to production and going to the client, Babel will run and convert your code. But you will never see that. This is not really something you should concern yourself about. Does this make sense?
Yes, and I mean, it's okay. I understand that we need to provide our application for older browsers. But do we need to create two files, like one file for our modern code, or should we install a plugin for Babel so that it will do it automatically?
No, it's just what I told you. You write JavaScript in the future, Babel will take care of everything. So in this case, if you say like import React from React, like this line 12, if you try it in the browser, this doesn't work. But it works in our case here in this web page, because behind the scenes, Babel is running and doing everything for you. It's converting the code, it's doing everything. So this is more of a good thing to know than it's not really important. It's just a good thing to know that your code is actually transformed or changed before going to production. But do you really need to know that? Is it something important? Do you need to write something or some code? No, it's not. Everything is behind the scene. The same way you don't care how JavaScript is running inside the browser will run it. You don't also care about Babel. Create React app will do it for you. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Cool. So it's not something you need to focus on. It's more of a good thing to know. And if we move this function here, we can see now that this code, especially this one, it's converted to a React create element. So we have document dot create element, and we give it like a h1. React has a similar thing, which is takes more parameters. The third parameter is just what's inside hello. So every call to this weird syntax that doesn't exist in JavaScript, it will be converted to something like this. You don't need to understand the details, but Babel is doing this behind the scene. This is just good to know, so you have some mental picture about what's happening. Because if somebody will ask you, this is not valid JavaScript, how it's running. If I will copy this and put it in the browser, it will not work. Tell him, oh yeah, create React app behind the scene, runs our code inside Babel, and Babel will produce new code that is equivalent to our code, to this file, but that runs in old browser and it works and stuff like that. Does it make sense as a high-level picture?
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat that says, so Babel's like playing Blu-ray on VHS, and I think that's definitely a fun way to compare it if you wanted to.
Can you repeat that again? Because I cannot see the...
Oh, it says there's a comparison in the chat that says, so Babel is like playing a Blu-ray disc in VHS player.
Oh, exactly. It's literally this. You don't really care about that, but it's just happening. Like you insert your DVD or disc or something, and it will take care of it. So that's
cool.
Babel,
thanks.
Yeah.
Because I regretted when I wrote it, as I thought it was dumb, but I'm glad it's a valid comparison.
No.
Cool.
No, please do right. Please. Even if it's not valid, we can still convert it to a valid one. Yeah, so that's why we can, because this is so tricky. People will ask you sometimes in interviews and things, this is not valid JavaScript. This doesn't run in the browser. How this can run this and produce hello? It's because before sending this to the browser, React will run it through Babel. Babel will convert it to an equivalent code that can run in the browser, and we will run that. I hope this makes sense for you. And let's continue. So we can make this more complex. We can put a div here and put an h1 inside it and put a p. Whoop. And put hello, it's a p. You can see it's literally like HTML, but it's inside JavaScript. And as somebody said before, it's JSX. It's called JavaScript XML. This is like, because we are able to write HTML inside our JavaScript, it's because of this thing called JSX. So just retain that. JSX is the extension of JavaScript that allows you to write or put HTML inside your JavaScript. It's an extension of JavaScript, and it's handled by Babel. Now this is called JSX. It's just good information to know. Like, we don't need to call it JSON thing. It's really up to you. Does this make sense? That we are able to render this, and if we see it here, we have a div. If we put an ID here, ID test, we have an ID test here, and we have hello and p1, the same way we have it here. And all these stuff are inside the root that it's here, and it was empty before. We filled it with the content because we called render with that root. If I will call root2, that will not work. Why this doesn't work? Can somebody
because root2 doesn't exist?
Exactly. There is no ID here with root2 unless I rename this to a root2.
I have a question.
Yes?
Is this a component?
We didn't write to component yet.
Okay.
But this is how React put things in the screen. What we are discussing now. Like how React works more than how we can use it and leverage it professionally. We will be able to do that, but I'm just trying to build up the knowledge. Does this make sense, guys? Guys. I assume so because nobody replied. Yes.
Oh, yeah, it makes sense.
Yes. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Can I make a question?
Yes.
Is that like in another way you could have like in that index HTML you could have build like a nav bar which will appear in all the page, and then all the rest of content we would insert through what changes would insert to the one through the.
I'm actually not sure about your question. Like, can you?
If you, it's like when you write in the index HTML.
Yeah.
It's something that you always have there, and the elements you want to change, you would put through the JS through React or not?
Precisely.
100% React.
Well, honestly, people try to go with 100% React, but your comparison is actually fairly right. Some people, they still try to write some static content inside HTML and only the changes part inside the JavaScript file. So you are right. You are completely right. Some people do that, but it's I would say it's more safer to bet everything on React. That's how I think about it.
Yeah.
But you are absolutely right.
Yeah. Thanks.
Cool.
Can I just talk about something?
Yeah.
I noticed when you hover over React DOM render, it shows the information about what is this, right?
Yeah.
Are you using an extension? Because I think it's the ES7 React Redux GraphicQL React Native. Are you using an extension in your browser to have?
I don't think so. This is just IntelliSense. This is TypeScript IntelliSense. I don't think I'm doing anything here. It should work by default. If you hover over it, it should work. I'm not doing
Yeah,
any
but
extension.
you have downloaded. That's my point, because I downloaded, but I don't know if everyone will have that. Everyone will have that.
I'm not sure even if I did download it.
So it should be built by default into VS Code.
Exactly.
Do you not see it on your end?
Perfect. No. I'm not following the class, and I'm trying just.
I see. Just to make sure everyone else is on the same page.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like I think
Makes
like
sense.
this. She's talking about this box that appears to show that this is rendering things. It should work. It should really work by default. Like I didn't do any configuration to work, but it's not that helpful. Look at this complex TypeScript stuff. It's not. It's more confusing. Like damn it. But yeah. So this is if you think about the render.
I have a question. To be honest. We use a compiler behind the screen. So we are in 2020. Why we need to use this? All the browsers now it's used from the client. So it's use a new version of a browser. So why we need that?
That is not true actually, because there is still old browsers that are not updated. If your company, I work for a company that supports Internet Explorer 10 and 11, and they don't have the last update for Internet Explorer 11 or 12. It was like 2012 or something. So we still live in a world where people use old browsers. If you use Chrome or Firefox, it's fine.
Yeah, it's yeah, exactly. But so I know the only two version of or only two browser they doesn't use the new version of everything. Explorer and Opera Mini. So yeah.
No,
so
but
this.
Can I say something? If you work for a corporate, if you work for a company, it will restrict you from installed software updates. So some people, they still have really old versions of Chrome. They are not allowed to update Chrome.
Okay.
If you work for a company, my company doesn't allow me to update softwares. If I want to install a browser extension, I need to request something to install it. So we try to support all browsers. If you work for a company that supports new browsers, good for you. We don't need that, but it's safer to do that, to support all browsers.
Just a question. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So I was about to say something. So the way you should think about this one is that this is the root, or this is the entry page. The same way you have body, and the body is responsible for, like, it's the entry point for the web page. The entry point of our web page now is the React.render. A React render now is responsible for like starting our page and filling it with content. So this is a good sort of thing to keep in mind, that React.render is the entry point. It's the place where everything starts. It's like a singularity. It's the Big Bang. It's where everything starts. This is a good thing to keep in mind. So we shifted from like body and div and stuff into starting it with a render. Does it make sense? Okay. Yes. Let me talk about something now. Or well, I think I can just delay it because so this is really crucial to understand, please, the render method. I will just re-explain it again. We take a chunk of JSX or HTML, we call this JSX, and it just looks like HTML. And we put it inside this root, and this root is just an empty div inside the HTML. This is the entry point. This is the most crucial part of a React app. This is where a React app starts. And it's draw React DOM. It's called React DOM because it couples React with the DOM. The DOM is the browser, document object models. Document object model means like the tree of your HTML and JavaScript and CSS. So this converts React into the DOM. It will transpile and change React into the DOM. It will run it into the DOM. Does it make sense? Now, this is super simple. You can actually accomplish this by copying this and putting it here. But why we are doing this? Because now we have the power of something called components. Now we can build something called a component. And a component, as I told you before, it's a piece of JavaScript and HTML that lives together, like a video player or something. So let's build this like a small component that is responsible for saying hello world or something like that. So usually there's two styles of building components. There's a class-based and a function-based. Let's start with the simplest one, which is a function-based. So you just create a function. You call it the name of your component. Let's say hello user. It's just a function. It should start with a capital letter. Component should start with capital letter. Remember that? H. And the component will return what? The component will return some HTML. So let's say we have a P here, or like an H3. Damn it, this is super slow. We have an H3 and we say hello. I would say hello to myself. Does it make sense? It's a function that returns some HTML or JSX, to be more precise. Now I want to use this function. I want to like render it. The way I use it is that instead of having a P and a div and stuff like that, I will also have now something called hello user. So I can literally use this name here and put it here. And when I refresh, I have hello units here. If I remove this P, welcome to my app. If we take a look at it, we see that I have an H1 because I have an H1 here. And hello user is translated to an H3. So React, when it sees a hello user, it knows that it's a component. It will go, run the function, return the HTML, and when we return the HTML, we passed it like this here. Does this make sense?
Yes, and it is. I mean, we wrote it like opening and closing tag of div. Just
yes,
hello user instead of div. And what if I write something inside this hello user? Hello user
yes.
opening and closing tag between hello user opening and closing tag.
Yeah, but that's beyond of the scope now. I just try to get what I'm trying to explain exactly now, because we will work with all these things, but just try to retain. Like, forget about the complexity. We don't want to make it complex and write stuff here and things. Just understand that I built a dynamic. I built a component here, a custom one, and I could use it. And React allows me to use it. I can use it 2 times.
Maybe
and
if
I
I
will
can
have
add
2 hello
something.
units. Yeah.
It's just saying that it can be better for readability if we use just a single tag instead of opening and closing, and when we are not passing anything inside the tags.
Really good idea. Let's do it. It means doing it this way.
Yes.
The same way you can do it with the image tag. If you have an image tag, if you have an image, you don't write this. You write it like this with the source and stuff, because you're not passing anything inside it. So we do it this way. Yes, that's a good thing. Is everybody okay with this?
Yes, but it is possible, right, to pass something inside that?
Yes, but we will like talk about the surface of what's possible.
Yes.
And please try to like.
I have another
bear with
question.
me. Yes.
Now that I have this function, can you reuse it to, it's always hello user, but can I do hello Jonas, hello Afros?
Super awesome question. Super awesome question. It comes in the right time. You won the question of the day. So you can do that. And if I will ask you, in HTML, you can say, for example, class equals something, ID equals something, source equals something. It's actually the same thing here. You can pass custom information, but you're not limited to IDs and classes and sources and stuff. You can pass a custom properties. You can pass any property you want. For example, I can say name equal Yunus. Okay? And here name equal I don't know, something else. I'll pick let's say Fernando. It's the last person that I talked about, Fernando. I hope this is right. Spell.
Yeah, it's fine.
So awesome. So we have a name now, and your question was like how we can customize this. So here you get an object called props or properties. Okay, it's properties. We abbreviated with props. It's just properties, just a shorter name. If we console log props here and go to the browser, to the console, I have here an object with a name key inside it. So I have an object with a name inside it. Why? Because all the properties, for example, you can pass here age, 17 or something, or I'm actually 25, I'm not 17. I swear I'm not. It's name and age. This object will contain, if I would save, it will contain name and age. So all the properties that you pass here, if you pass, for example, ID, test, you will have name and age and ID. So essentially, the properties that you would pass here, they would be put in together as like an object with key value, key value, key value, key value, key value. So if we want to display the name, let's go back. If we want to display the name, we can say props.name. Does this make sense? For the person who were asking the question? So this is how we use a dynamic property. Except if
it's like we are building an object with the properties we add in the React render.
Exactly. So now if we will do this, I will refresh. The funny thing is that I will see hello props.name. It's like literally. So if I will put here 5 plus 5, I mean 5 plus 5, it will be like literally 5. So you can see that React is only displaying things. It's not running them. And that's because if we want to run something, we put it in some curly braces like this. And now this will give us a 10. So this is really important. If you want to just display some text, you just write it. If you want to run something, you put it in curly braces. Now we want to run props.name. It's JavaScript code.
I have a question, Yunus.
Yes.
Till Lucha's question, everything was clear and cool, but after her question, I'm just lost. Why are we doing this?
It's because when you have an image, for example, tag, the image tag needs a source attribute. So it will load a different image based on a source attribute, src. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
So usually components or HTML tags or something, they behave differently based on the information that you pass to them. That's what we are trying to achieve here. We want hello user to be generic. And based on the name that we give it from outside, like a source, it will display a different string. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay.
Cool. So now if we will refresh, we say hello Yunus, hello Fernando. And if we want to say hello Fernando too, it will change here. So I don't need to go and change the component anymore. From outside, I can configure and change the component and what does it render. Does that make sense? Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I have a question, Yunus.
Yeah.
In JavaScript, normally we use backticks with $sign.
Why this is not JavaScript. This is not JavaScript. This is called JSX. Remember that. It's a custom JavaScript syntax built by React.
Okay. So
this is... Yeah. So this will be transpiled. This will be changed, as we said with Babel. Okay. So this is not the same thing as the backtick. The template thing from JavaScript, it's different than this one. This one is something custom to React.
So maybe I can just jump in there just to further clarify. So
yes,
in this case here, between the H3 elements, if we were to just use a straight up backtick, that would just be literally writing like literal backticks in there. And the template strings that you're referring to, those are only valid in JavaScript. So you can use the template strings, but then you'd have to use them within the actual little curly brackets within the HTML. So I think if we were to look at it very simply, the little curly brackets are a way for us to say, all right, between here and here, this is where I'm going to write JavaScript. And that's when you can start passing in variables. And that's where React starts to show and shine. And that's how it makes our HTML dynamic.
I want to say something.
Yeah.
Is this how we will? I know you said that don't think about Node right now, but I think that is the way when we combine Node and React, and then we will run both at the same time with backticks and without backticks. It will know, right?
So if here, for example, when you say here, let's say console.log, you can use here backticks. You can use, for example, here hello, and you can use here a name, and const name equal 5, or that's stupid. Name equal to 5. It's stupid. So Yunus. So you can still do this in JavaScript, but what we are talking about here is that inside the HTML tags or inside JS6, how to put dynamic stuff. So this doesn't replace your JavaScript. This is only valid once you are inside, like HTML, like here.
Okay.
But outside, you are free, and it's just JavaScript. It's JavaScript, the normal JavaScript, with a bit of extension, not replacement. It will add something to it, not replace things.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Cool. So it's
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So inside the div test, when it is running, so first in line 23, when it reads H1, it understands it's an HTML element, right?
Precisely.
So when it goes to the next line 24, and when it sees hello user, it knows this is not an HTML element, so it assumes that it should be a function that is declared already.
It's not assuming, but it's because a capital letter. So the only way to differentiate is because capital small letter. That's why we need to use capital letters. So when it sees a capital letter, it will assume that it's a component defined by the user. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah. So the components are always functions. That's how, because we do something inside the component, so it's going to be a function.
Yeah, it's either a function or a class. We will discuss how to write in the class, but it's essentially a function or a class.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so hello user. Okay, fine. Yeah, and we have a name after that, so which means the name is going to be anything that we write after the hello user. It's going to be the parameter to the function.
Yes, it will be an object to the function.
Okay, so it can have many properties. In this case, we have just one property name. Okay.
Yeah, we can put age, and we are saying props.name. It's because the name is a property on the object props.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I got it. Okay.
Cool. Any other questions? Cool. Let's continue. So this is basically sort of the ingredients and the idea behind React is that we can define custom functions or define custom components and reuse them here. So imagine in this case, if hello user is to grow and do so many things, we can just like render multiple ones of it. We don't need to actually duplicate the code or duplicate the HTML. And if we want to change something, I can just go here and say, hello, sir, or something, or hello, madam, or something. Or it's just we can change components and do. Of course, this is a really simple component that doesn't serve the purpose, but you get the idea. I see that you don't have a problem with that. So let's turn into Something else, what you can do is you can just do this directly. Or let's just do this. You can just also just do this. You don't need to render a div inside it and stuff. You can just render the hello user directly. And React, when it sees the hello user, it knows that the hello user is a component because of the capital letter, and it will say, I will run the function, the return of it, I will pass it here. It will pass the return here. That's how React goes behind doing that.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so as you already mentioned that the components are reusable, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you mean by reusable? So I can use from line 17 to 19, I can use that code anywhere? What do you mean by reusable?
This is a case of reusability. I literally used this component twice and I didn't need to do any change for it. It's like something that I can use in multiple ways and multiple shapes without editing it.
Okay, okay, yeah.
So hello user, I pass name to it, I pass age to it, and it will just thing. Let's say, for example, let's have age here and say, let's say here, for example, yeah, something else. If you want to pass strings, you do this. If you want to pass something else, you do this. So if you want to pass a number like 25, you do this. Let's guess the age of Fernando. Let's name it 27. I don't know. I've never met him, so I put it 27.
24.
24?
Yeah.
Nice. Not that far.
No, it's close.
Yeah, exactly. So what we can do here is do an if. So we say if props.age, because it's in the object, is less than 18. We can say here let I'll just name it result. Result equal you can't. Damn it! I need. What's happening? You can't drive.
You're missing it.
Else, go ahead. And here we can say hello and put a comma and put our dynamic string inside it and say result. And somebody said I'm missing something. I am with you.
Excuse me. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So now if you run this, it will say, hello, Yunus, go ahead. Hello, Fernando, go ahead. If we change mine to 17, it will say, hello, Yunus, you can drive. So now my component has some logic and I can easily reuse it without actually breaking anything or like copying or duplicating the HTML or anything. So I just have if props.age is less than 18, we do this else and we put the string here. Does this make sense?
So wait a second. Despacito. Yeah. Basically, first, if you go a little bit down in the code.
Yeah.
With the lines 31 and 32, we can add the keys to build our object, right?
Yeah, 32 and 33.
32 and 33, yeah, sorry.
Yes.
So, and this will also pass as arguments to our function, to our component, and we can add the logic to validate something.
Exactly.
In this case, the age.
Exactly.
Okay. But I think I could get a little bit confused. It's a lot of information to put in just one thing.
Yeah, definitely. It is like you are being introduced to the new world now. It makes sense. Take it easy and just try to focus on the big picture with some details. And hopefully it will be better. We have 5 weeks or 4 weeks and a half.
I have a question, Yunus.
Yes.
Okay. So from line 18 to line 20 is like the usual JavaScript that we write. But in the line 24, when we try to, write some JavaScript, it should be within the braces. Yeah, because it's inside the HTML. That's why.
Can you? You mean line 24?
No, I was before this, from line 18 to 20, I was thinking, we cannot write JavaScript like as we usually do. We always need to write it within.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so only when we write the JavaScript within the HTML, we need the curly braces.
Yeah, we need
Or
like
else it's just the normal thing that we usually do.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's just once you start writing HTML, you change.
I have another
yes.
question.
Yes, good.
Can I see the object props?
I can console log it.
Yeah, at least to understand how it looks like.
This is how it looks like. I can do this and paste it here. It looks like this.
And I can use the properties of this object, for example, the length or something like that, or the value.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
function.
It's a bit. Yeah, you can definitely do it. It's just JavaScript. It's a bit. It's better to treat like the object as sort of values and properties inside it more than thinking about it in a general term JavaScript, because it could change or something. But yeah, it's just normal object. You can run object.keys.values, transform it, do whatever you want on it. Yes. So. Whoop. Yes. I think people need a break now. Are you up for a break now or not yet? Or what do you think?
Yeah, tack. Can
Yes.
you go back to the
We
screen,
always.
please?
What? There was a question. There was a question. Should I just
No.
stop? Okay, cool. I will stop sharing my screen.